My name is Hope Warren, and I'm the director at the University of Georgia Cobb County Cooperative Extension Office. And I have with me today Mr. John Sowers. John is the administrator with the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mr. Sowers.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. I have lots of questions for you, but I would like to start out by having you tell us a little bit about your office and what you all do.
This is our 40th year. We came into being in 1975. We have about 50 employees. Our budget's about $5 million, which is approximately at 1/4% of the state budget. We're pretty small. But with that, we feel like we get a lot done. But the two main things we do, we administer and enforce the Georgia Fair Business Practices Act, which covers a whole lot of ground. Basically, we deal with business-to-consumer transactions involving the sale, lease, rental, or other disposition of property and services. We don't have any jurisdiction over business-to-business disputes, with one fairly narrow exception. About 20-some years ago, the legislature amended our statute to give us jurisdiction over problems arising between businesses with the sale of office products. But with that exception, we have to refer business-to-business disputes elsewhere. We also administer, we don't have any enforcement function, but we administer Georgia's lemon law, which applies to the sale or leasing of new vehicles. We have 34 manufacturers who are registered with our office when they have to be in order to introduce their products in our state. And we're having a volume of activity greater than we've ever had under the lemon law because basically automobile sales and leases have increased over the last year or two. Last year, we did over $13.5 million in terms of settlements, arbitration awards under our mandatory arbitration program, and the recovery of fees for administering the law. So it's pretty big. Our agency as a whole last year delivered about $30 million in savings, restitution, fines, penalties, forfeitures, money, economic benefit to the citizens of Georgia. That's a return on investment of approximately 6-to-1, which is not bad for a government agency.
Not at all.
Not bad for a profit-making business. I was reading the other day where Walmart, their return on investment, the biggest corporation in America, is 0.22 to 1, 22%. So when you're doing 600%, that's
You're
something to be
looking
proud
good.
of.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of my staff, our people. I think they're working very hard, very efficiently. At any one time, we have between 250 to 300 civil investigations underway, 100 or so criminal investigations. We have a couple hundred matters in the courts for enforcement. And as I said, lemon law, last year we had over 800 cases to administer with respect to that law. So we're a busy agency,
Sounds like
fun place to work.
Sounds very interesting. I've actually heard some of your stories, and you're very entertaining telling them, but they're very interesting stories. It's amazing at what some people try to get away with.
Yeah, it is. About half of our business deals with scams, basically.
And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. We're approaching the holiday season. A lot of Christmas shopping starting up, a lot of eating out because you're out in the mall and you just want to stop and get a bite to eat. A lot of online things, mobile devices being used for purchases. So I really kind of wanted to talk about that. If you could give us some tips about shopping safe, protecting your checking account, protecting your credit cards, what's the best way to shop. If you could just kind of go through some advice and give us some tips.
Well, let me start by telling you that, as you have indicated, the amount of scam activity in the marketplace increases tremendously during the holiday season. I mean, many of our retailers do half their business in 6, 8, 12 weeks. And they fall into two broad categories. The first is traditional scams who just increase in their volume.
Right.
The so-called Nigerian money scam, the grandparent scam, and so forth, home repair scams. Then we have those which are more specialized, geared to the holidays themselves. Right. A lot of those take place through telemarketing or through the sale of gift cards, for example. Now, to be more specific, what can you do in shopping? You need to always, not just during the holidays, but all the time, be very conscious of several things. First of all, your sensitive financial information is particular and peculiar to you. The end object of many, if not all, scammers is to obtain that information so that it can be illicitly used. It may be used immediately. It may be used sometime in the future. It may not even be used by the people who are obtaining it. There's a huge black market that has to do with the sale of personal financial information, beginning with email addresses and bank accounts and so forth.
So that person may steal your information and sell it to someone else that's actually going to do.
Exactly. Your information could be compromised today. You may not be affected by it for 3 months, 6 months, or longer.
That's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought, but it's something we all need to keep in mind. We need 365 days of the year to protect that information. There's certain things that you can do that may alert you to a problem. One simple one is this. We all have, and usually we have multiple, credit and or debit cards.
Right.
So you get a statement every month that lists all the transactions that have been had with respect to your particular card. You'd be amazed how many people don't review that list or just look at it perfunctorily. You need to look at it item by item by item by item. If you see something on there that you don't recall having purchased, or it has an unusual name that you've never heard of before, call the issuer of the card, or in some cases, especially with credit cards, you'll find a phone number. This is not mandatory, but probably a third of the entries I find on my credit card receipts or bills have a phone number where you can call and see who this is and what they're selling.
Right.
You may have just forgotten about the purchase, or this may be a bogus one. We run into that frequently. So that's something that you need to do not only during the holidays, but all the time.
Right.
Another thing you need to do is monitor your credit information. There are 3 leading credit reporting firms in the country. One of them is headquartered here, Equifax. They assemble and they sell, and it's a legitimate business, of course, information to various folks, businesses typically, that want to do business with you or are doing business with you, and they want to know what your credit history is. You have the right to get 3 free credit reports within a 12 calendar month period. It's very easy to do. There's a website, or you can contact any one of the 3 purveyors. They will transmit that request to the other 2. You'll have that information within 3 to 5 days, and you'll be amazed to see who's trying to get credit information about you.
It is easy. I do that every
very
year.
easy.
You know, it's easy access to do that kind of stuff. Very smart too, because you'd be very surprised sometimes at what you might find.
You'll be amazed at what you might find. I did this, the first time I did this was not long after I entered into my position in 2011. And I got a credit report from one of the 3 agencies that had every transaction I had entered into back to 1979, a long time back, 32 years at that point. So you'd be very surprised, and you need to keep track of that. And you need every year to remind yourself to do that.
That's excellent advice. Could you tell us a little bit about the gift card scam? You mentioned the gift card scam. You've also mentioned a loan scam during the holidays. Can you kind of go into that a little bit? Because those are probably pretty common.
They are. They're common all year round, but their use increases during holiday periods. And also, there's another little bump in the spring because a lot of people get married in the spring.
Yeah.
But the important thing to realize is that these are just methods to obtain sensitive financial information. It's just a hook. These are typically not legitimate businesses. You're not ever going to get any tangible benefit from them. There's going to be a loss, in fact. So it's a way to attract your attention. And of course, during the holidays, we're all used to spending more money. We're all typically in a more generous frame of mind than we might be throughout the year. And so we're more wide open to scams like that.
So if you're going to give someone a gift card for Christmas, you're better just to go to a local, well-known establishment and buy the gift card rather than...
That's what I would do. Now, certainly, it's pretty safe to buy a gift card from a organization or a business that you have done business with frequently. Right. I would never buy a gift card over the internet from an organization or a business that I had never done business with before.
Okay.
I just wouldn't. The risk is just too great.
Okay.
Because you're going to have to divulge all that information in order to get that gift card.
Okay.
So yes, you're right. Better to go to the retail establishment in your community and do it face to face. But you know, even when you're doing that, and this is true of any time that you use a credit or a debit card, there's some things you need to do. One is, don't let that card ever go out of your personal view. And sometimes that's easier said than done, especially in a restaurant, for example. But you want to try to make sure that that doesn't happen. I like restaurants where you can go and pay at the counter, because then you can keep track a little better of that.
There's actually a restaurant we went to recently that has the actual monitor sitting on your table, and you can swipe your card and take care of your bill right there. And that's the first time I'd ever done it. That was very interesting.
I think we're going to see more and more of that, especially as we transition, as we're just beginning to do, and as the Europeans have been doing for years, out of the mode of using credit cards with plastic strips on the back that contain all that financial information to using cards or other devices with a chip in them. I think you're going to see that happen more often.
That's interesting.
Well, that didn't happen. They went straight to the chips in Europe because they didn't have the kind of interconnected network that would allow for payments to be transmitted using cards with plastic strips. So they have benefited from what was really a backwardness, if you will,
at the time.
At the time, in their sort of an analogy to cell phones in Africa. Hardly anybody, other than in Egypt and South Africa and parts of Morocco, has a landline over there. They use cell phones. They always have. And of course, we're now getting to that ourselves. 20-some% of all of us, including myself,
times changes, don't it?
Yeah, but it's funny. What our society is kind of catching up in some ways with societies which we would think are not as advanced as we, but which in certain respects are using modes of communication and data transmission that are well ahead of what's typical here.
That's very interesting. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with a little more information. Thank you so much.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at fatherhood.gov.
Lead paint poisoning affects 1 million children today. If you're pregnant or have young children and your home was built before 1978, you could be at risk. Learn how to protect your family. To find your home's danger zones, the health effects, or just to find help, log on to leadfreekids.org.
Mom, can I have $1? I think my purse is upstairs on the bed. It's not here. Check the dining room. No. The upstairs closet.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
Thanks. You believe this guy? Are you trying to start a wildfire? Sorry. Pass the honey?
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We're back. Thank you for coming back to join us. We're once again here with Mr. John Sowers. He's the administrator with the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection. We've been talking about holiday scams and shopping safely during Christmas and that sort of thing. But you mentioned something early in our conversation about a grandparent scam. And I'm familiar with this because this has happened to me. But I would like to talk about it a little bit. I received an email from a friend of mine that I know very well, very familiar with the email address, and he told me that he was in another country and that he had lost his wallet and he needed some money to be sent to him, and could I please help him? He was desperate. He couldn't get in touch with anybody else. I happened to have known that this gentleman was not out of the country. I had seen him the day before, so I knew it was some type of a scam, but I had never had that happen. So you called it a grandparent scam. Can you kind of go into that?
Yeah, this started about 10 years ago. And at that point, it was, the modus operandi was a grandson or a granddaughter contacting a grandparent saying, I'm stranded in Paris. It was always some big resplendent place far away. Never I'm stranded in Cleveland or
I'll come and get you. I don't
or
need
Birmingham.
to send you no money. Yeah.
No, this is always outside the country. And the idea was, of course, this is another way to get sensitive financial information from you. The scam has mushroomed, so now there's many different versions of it. The next door neighbor, your daughter, your son, your uncle, or somebody like that,
right?
Or your business partner, or what have you. I first ran into this about 7 years ago. I was teaching part-time at one of our local colleges, and late in the afternoon of a certain day, I received an email from one of my students. And my student was stuck in London, you know, and it was the same thing. I need $300 to get home. My passport and my wallet have been stolen, and so forth. I realized this was a scam, so I just deleted it, finished what I was doing, packed up, got my car, drove up to the campus, parked, and I was walking in the building, and here came my student down the hall.
That you'd just gotten the
email
from.
Yeah, and I said, boy, you got back from London in a hurry, didn't you? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, what I'm telling you is that you've been hacked. Now, again, she was not, in that instance, the victim, only in the sense that her email address had fallen into the wrong hands.
Right.
The real victim, the intended victim, was me or anybody else who got that email from her. But she could, in the course of things, become a victim because, as we've indicated, these lists, these purloined lists, are distributed sometimes free, sometimes as a trade, sometimes for cash, for money, to people who will misuse them to try to get to the person whose email account it is.
Right.
So there's various uses that are made of this. The term grandparent scam simply describes how that scam originally came into being, but it now has innumerable varieties.
And if you ever get an email like that, first off, don't fall prey to it.
Oh, absolutely.
But you do need to contact your friend that you supposedly have gotten this email from and let them know that their address has been hacked.
Yeah, but don't do it by replying to that email.
Call them. Okay.
Or else you're just playing into the hands of the scammers.
Exactly.
You know, you're wise to them. And then they'll have your email address.
That's
so
right.
So you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
A related thing that this brings to mind is, again, this began about 10 years ago. A number of scammers started sending phony emails to people pretending to be their banker.
Oh, yes.
And they would have the logo of SunTrust Bank, Bank of America, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And they would ask you to verify your account information because there had been a security breach and they wanted to make sure your account was safe. Well, of course, their intention was precisely the opposite.
Right.
So from that, another variant has become the IRS, FBI, ICE, or what have you, contact. Now, no federal law enforcement agency and no state law enforcement agency in Georgia initiates a contact with anybody by email.
Right.
They will show up on your doorstep, uninvited, and contact you personally.
Right.
If they want to talk to you, investigate you, or what have you. So if you get an email from your bank, certainly if you get one from a bank that you've never used, you know that's phony.
Right.
But even from your bank, call the bank, talk to your banker, and tell them what you've gotten. Chances are it's phony. If you get an email from the FBI, and I used to get one, it was personally signed by the then director, Robert Mueller, with his signature. You know.
My son got an email like that from supposedly the FBI. And, you know, young people, elderly people, people our age, you're not expecting it. You know, you're going through your daily routine and you open this email or something odd like that, and it just kind of takes you off guard.
Well, and there's a psychological edge to this.
Yes.
Most of us are inclined to be law-abiding people.
That's right.
Okay? We want to help law enforcement agencies, all right?
They're taking care of us.
That's
They're
right.
protecting
And so we
us.
want to do our part as good citizens to respond to them. This is the psychology behind all scams. They're taking advantage of your good nature. We see this in rudimentary ways and in very sophisticated ways. One scam, fortunately we haven't seen it very much in this year, but in 2013, especially in the fall and the winter, in all the counties around North Metro Atlanta, Douglas, Cobb, Paulding, North Fulton, Gwinnett, Cherokee, so forth, North DeKalb, there was a scam involving older people. Now, seniors are particularly vulnerable to scams because A, they typically have a nest egg of some sort.
Right.
B, they often live alone or as an elderly couple. C, they grew up in a better time in the sense that there was less of this kind of activity going on.
Right.
They therefore are more trusting.
Right.
What I'm referring to was a home repair scam, which has been, we put a dent in it because we got 7 people arrested, or 7 people charged, 5 arrested, 3 are already in prison, 2 are awaiting sentencing. The prosecution happened here in Cobb County, but it involved operations in 6 different counties.
Wow.
An individual would show up at your door, say, I'm a surveyor, I'm surveying the property either behind or adjoining yours, and I can't find the landline stake. Could you come show me where it is? So the homeowner walks back in the backyard with this individual. Meantime, a truck shows up with several of his Confederates. They walk in, clean out whatever they can get. Typically they're looking for china and silver, and get out by the time the homeowner returns. And sometimes the homeowner doesn't even know this has happened because they shut the drawers back, and hours later, the next day, discovers
that's terrible.
Things missing. It is terrible. It's about as low as you can go.
It sure is.
But let me tell you the worst scam that I have run into in my 3 years and 10 months in this job. It's an organization which called themselves the Child Support Agency. They started out in the Tampa Bay area in Florida around 2005 or 6. They got run out of there, but Florida never prosecuted them. They came across the state line to Lakeland, 2 miles inside Georgia, near I-75. They opened up an office. They had an 800 number. Initially, they were just dealing with Georgians, but over the course of a year or so, they expanded their operation so that it reached from Texas east included Florida and Georgia and all the way north to Virginia, 13 or 14
Goodness
states.
gracious.
They'd have an 800 number for each one, and what they were doing was they were checking, and you can do this because they're public records, and most of the time they're electronic, who has been ordered to pay child support in Little Rock, Arkansas, in Nashville, Tennessee, in Birmingham, Alabama, in Atlanta, what have you. They'd call these people up, tell them they were the child support agency, they needed to mail the support checks to them. And they'd give them an account number and so forth. And it all sounded very official. They stole between $15 and $20 million in about a year and a half. Ultimately, we got the principals prosecuted in the federal court in the Middle District of Georgia. The convictions were obtained against the two leading principals. One of them was already in prison in Texas for child molestation. The one principal was sentenced in federal court. You get sentenced by a number of months. One guy got 198 months. The other one got 157 months. That's a pretty long time, especially when you consider that in the federal system, parole has been abolished, so that generally a felon serves 85% of their sentence. But you know, given the magnitude of the harm that they did, no sentence is too long for that kind of activity.
Right.
But I was really pleased that we were able to instigate that prosecution. One of my investigators was the government's first witness. So you talk about scams and really harmful ones.
Right.
That was not holiday connected. They did it year round.
Yeah. Yeah, and that could be a really big one because there's lots of child support out there that has to be paid. So, well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Do you mind giving a phone number or a website that people can get in touch with you or your office?
Yeah, let me give you the website number, address. It's www.consumer.ga.com. That's our general website. You can link from there to our consumer education website. We have a newsletter we put out electronically, free, every 2 weeks.
I get it. It's great.
Do you get it?
Thank you. I do, yes.
Those are real questions posed to us by people who are calling in, and we undertake to research and answer them. So I think it's very instructive. Great.
Thank you so much again,
Thank you.
and I look forward to talking to you again sometime in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. If you want to get in touch with the Cooperative Extension Office, you can reach us at 770-528-4070, and our website is www.cobbextension.com. Thank you.